Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to us or watching us. Thank you for making the Sports and the World podcast part of your day. I'm LaDarius. Hope all of you are well and safe out there. And before we get into Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Baker Mayfield, it's going to be a NFL and kind of a basketball driven segment. I just want to stop and just acknowledge the passing of Scott Hall. And first of all, by saying, hey, first and foremost, what Scott Hall meant to wrestling. And you hear people like didn't know him personally, but being a fan, like so many of you that may be watching or listening, or fans of wrestling, Scott Hall was arguably one of the greatest intercontinental champions of all time. Who could forget the first ever ladder match in company history when he defeated Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 10? And so many great moments, within when he became NWO. And one of the things I remember vividly about Scott Hall is that I remember in the match where he came from the crowd, he was dressed as security, I believe. This was when he was at WCW. And he tased Goldberg in the chest. And I'm like, and growing up watching wrestling, I'm like, that's different. And it stuck with me. It still sticks with me to this day. But more importantly, another thing about Scott Hall is that Scott Hall the person. And we all battle certain things in our lives. And Scott Hall meant so much to so many people beyond the ring. And at the end of the day, that's what it matters the most. We the fans know Scott Hall, Razon Ramon, the wrestler. But some people feel they know him as dad, brother, whatever. They know him in a different capacity. And that's what I'm thinking about, the families and friends who knew him and who loved him. So a special thank you to Scott Hall, Razon Ramon, for everything that you did for the business, and continued thoughts, prayers, and love to his family and friends. Now, with that being said, let's jump into some of the football news. Let's talk about, obviously, Tom Brady running it back for season 23. And for some folks, it's not all that surprising. I'm mildly surprised because I think what happened with Tom Brady sat at home, and I just felt like the way the season ended for them, losing to the eventual Super Bowl champions, the Los Angeles Rams, it really stuck with him. And I felt like, he saw on his Twitter post where he has that unfinished business. I think the goal for him coming back is that he feels that he can come back, and this Tampa team could very much well win a Super Bowl. And I believe that they can win a Super Bowl because the odds have shifted significantly. Oh, well, Tampa Bay's favorites again, as opposed to them being, there's no chance to, now they definitely have a chance. Tom Brady swings the momentum, and he's a difference maker. He's a game changer on the field, off the field. So what's interesting is that when you look at Tampa Bay's odds, a lot of guys like Leonard Fournette. I wrote an article for Sportskeeda, and be the NFL. I wrote a piece. Listen, last week, Leonard Fournette was ready to, to say see you later. Tampa Bay, all of a sudden, Brady comes back. The Instagram post goes away. It could change the way, essentially a lot of players come in. They re-sign Carlton Davis, their cornerback. So it's the Tom Brady effect, essentially. Is that, hey, he wants to run it back. And I really felt going to the quarterback situation, you heard him connected to Jimmy Garoppolo, you heard from Russell Wilson, who eventually went to the Denver Broncos. But now, you're getting Brady, who will be 45 years old to start the season. He'll be the oldest quarterback to ever start an NFL game when the season starts in September. What's amazing about Tom Brady, and I won't peel into as much as I got, as much. But what I will say about Tom Brady is this, that Tom Brady's the guy who, he knows his body. And I think two reasons he wouldn't have came out of retirement for two reasons. A, Giselle, his wife, definitely talked it over with the family and had to essentially kind of convince her, to play again. And secondly, it's all about Tom Brady seeing what's going on in the league. And he's seeing that where the momentum is absolutely shifting it's shifting where all the good quarterbacks now seem to be in the AFC. And he feels like I could run this back and win. Because outside of possibly, listen, you got Aaron Rodgers, you still got, but we're talking about contenders. He still feels that, listen, Tampa Bay this season just won the Super Bowl back in 2020. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. And they lost to the eventual Super Bowl champions, the previous season. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that he could feel that, hey, I could run this back and win. But when you talk about Tom Brady, you can't speak it to him. You can't talk about him, I should say, in the context of football. He's a person to talk about in the context of sports because what he's doing is very unprecedented. He's coming back into a situation where at age 45, he can still play at a high level. Look what he did at age 44. He led the league in passing yards at age 44. I think people think about that. He led the league in passing touchdowns as well. Tom Brady feels that he has another year, and who am I or other people to say that he doesn't have another year? Because I think he does. So with that being said, speaking of quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers finally signed his extension. It was a very cap-friendly deal. Wasn't as much as, Ian Rappaport, but very much in the ballpark. 5 year, $185 million. As reported, 4 year, $200 million. That was reported by Ian Rappaport. Here's the thing with Aaron Rodgers. In this extension, he has to win a Super Bowl. People are like, oh, well, Darius, that's obvious. But no, he has to. Because at some point, they're literally, at this stage in the game, you're entering year 18. And you're at a point where you have to do something. Like since that 2010, you won the Super Bowl in the 2010 season, you've been to the NFC Championship game 4 times, lost all 4 times. So at some point, when are we, Green Bay and we as fans, we want results. And we want to see him back in the Super Bowl because there's no way. Now, with Davante Adams reportedly not playing under the tag, I think they're going to work on a long-term deal because I think they know how much Davante Adams means to Green Bay, and more importantly, Aaron Rodgers knows how much he means to Green Bay. Listen, Aaron Rodgers has thrown more touchdown passes to Davante Adams than any receiver he's ever thrown to in his career. So that's how much, Davante Adams means. So the penultimate question is, where did that place him in the NFC? Listen, Tom Brady changes the game. The NFC now becomes very interesting because I think when Aaron Rodgers saw Tom Brady come back, he's like, oh, great. Because he saw one great NFC quarterback in Russell Wilson go out to the AFC. And he looks in his own division like, well, I'm competing against, the Lions. We don't know who their quarterback's going to be. You got Justin Fields in Chicago, and you got Kirk Cousins re-upping in Minnesota. So you're like, well, I can win the NFC North. But how far can I progress in the playoffs? Because you got to factor the Rams are, still up there as a favorite. Essentially Matthew Stafford still running it back there. But Tom Brady now re-enters the picture. If you're Aaron Rodgers, you have to beat Tom Brady. You have to get to the Super Bowl to justify the extension, and to the point, like, listen, maybe add to your legacy. Because whether it's fair or not, and I won't delve into it, I delved into it last time when I talked about legacies and quarterbacks, but I love talking about quarterbacks. So it just bears worth repeating. Is that, listen, when you get there, like if you're Aaron Rodgers, getting back there, you have to get back to a Super Bowl simply because of expectations. It's where there's no excuse in the world why you can't get back because you're in a division that's it's a winnable division. You're in a situation where your team accepts the quote, listen, you just re-signed, you re-signed one of your better defensive players in Preston was LaDarius Smith. Sorry, top of my head. I used to be good at that. But the point is, listen, Green Bay is going to do their part. And Rodgers has to do his part. Because at some point, there's a window. And for Aaron Rodgers, this is the window. He's maybe a 2-year window. Listen, Brady, I'm assuming, is not going to play after the 2022 season. So he has a window where he could win. And he has to get to at least one Super Bowl and possibly win it. Because at this stage in the game, there's really no excuse in the world why you can't win a Super Bowl. And And the reality is, if you're an Aaron Rodgers, I think he understands that pressure. That listen, is it fair the way that we treat quarterbacks? Yes and no, because it varies on the quarterback. How we compare. Listen, I'll put it this way: Russell Wilson also has won Super Bowl, but the difference is Russell Wilson has been to at least another Super Bowl, and Rodgers hasn't been to the Super Bowl in over a decade. And we could argue the Brady effect. We can argue why, but the fact of the matter is, Aaron Rodgers needs to go back to that Super Bowl. Like, I can't overstate it enough, because at the end of the day, you're a Hall of Famer. But listen, they're giving you this money. They're paying you like a franchise guy. And listen, no, like I said, you can't compare Brady to anybody else. It's not a fair comparison in terms of accomplishments. That's not fair to any other quarterback. But this feels like a situation. The only one comparison where you can do Brady and Rodgers is that look, at some point when Brady, people felt that in New England, it was the Belichick way. But it took Brady to leave to understand that it was the Brady way that maybe elevated the Patriots in many situations. And for Aaron Rodgers, it's a question of, well, is it Aaron Rodgers' fault or is it Green Bay's fault? We don't know. We simply do not know. But if you ask people, listen, Aaron Rodgers, listen, it's very hard to explain. Listen, I don't like blaming, one person wholly when it's doing people. But listen, Green Bay's played their part. But the fact that they're paying you, they're giving you what you want, now you have to give them results. They need that ROI to justify them paying you what they're paying you. So that being said, quarterback driven show today. But before we dive into Brown's big picture, a couple of things. You can listen to this episode and every episode of the Sports in the World podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, and you can watch the podcast here on YouTube. If you're watching this episode and watch the previous episode that I've done, you're going to start seeing more of this face. So be prepared for that. And also, I'll be doing March Madness stuff. I'll be doing some previews that'll be coming out today, covering some of the more important first round games. And then I'll be going up throughout the tournament as well for both the men's and the women's tournament. Glad we can say women's March Madness. Well, I was already saying it before, but now we can say it. And also follow the account on social media at Sports the World, Twitter and Instagram. I'm trying to rebuild the Instagram there. But follow me personally on Twitter at LaDarius_Brown, Instagram at LaDarius_Brown. Follow the podcast on Facebook. Polls, comment, thoughts, always welcome. And if you also want to drop questions on the show, drop it on my Twitter, on the podcast Twitter, drop it wherever you can on Facebook. I'll make sure to answer it on the show. So all of that being said, big breath. Let's go into Brown's big picture. And one thing that I want to talk about Baker Mayfield, because to me, Baker Mayfield's fascinating. Maybe for not the same reasons why you may think, the listener or the viewer may think so. Baker Mayfield is a quarterback to me where I'll be the first to admit I was like, I'm not sure he's the guy. But it took for me leading the team to the playoffs, be like, this could be the guy. Because listen, whether Cleveland fans want to admit it or not, he's probably the best quarterback you had from a starting perspective, maybe a couple of decades, maybe since Bernie, because you've had a bajillion quarterbacks since then. Now, it really feels to me that there's a great divide on Brown's Twitter, specifically. I know a couple of people who are Browns fans. They'll shout out to Gab Goody, the Haley Murphy, follow them on their socials. They're amazing. And it feels like, so I kind of got drawn into, looking to see what's going on in Brown's Twitter. And what I will say about all of this, now the Browns are pursuing Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson. Now, this is what I always say. Listen, from a legal standpoint, and I made a video about, you can check that on TikTok, where I talk about, well, listen, Deshaun Watson on the criminal aspect, he won't go to prison. but there are still civil lawsuits out there. So it's still that aura is still around him of those sexual, allegations against him. And it really feels as though that Cleveland is doing their due diligence. Here's what I mean. To me, I'm not taking a side, or I may be taking a side, depending on how, you, the listener viewer, take it. But Cleveland is doing their due. Listen, my Falcons are sniffing around Deshaun Watson. Now, do I want Deshaun Watson on my team if I'm a fan? It's very tough, because if we get, from the last time we saw him in the 2020 season, we get a guy like that. We get a guy leading the league in pass. We get a top 5 passer in the league. Yes, but it's those allegations, and it's about image. And to me, image is everything. Like, think about it. In your job, in your profession, why do you think sometimes your job monitors what you place on social media? Why is that? Because you represent the company. And you have to look at a football team like a multi-billion-dollar company. It's why do you think they invest so much in the quarterback position? Because the quarterback is essentially the CEO of that team. Like, obviously they have CEOs in the front office. I get that. But to me, it's the image. Do you want Deshaun Watson essentially being the face of your franchise, being the CEO of your franchise? And think of the fans as those who support your company. Would you lose some fans doing that? And I've seen some that say yes. They will not be fans of teams. I've seen some that goes, you know what? If he can win us games, it overlooks it. And it's all about perspective. It's truly all about perspective. And going back to Cleveland, it really feels that, listen, and I cannot stress this enough. Do front offices see, go on social media? Sure, maybe. But they're not going to base, well, you know what? Our fans say, wait, we don't want this guy, so we got it. No. The fans are looking at what's best for business, which you always hear is a kind of a WWE term for those who are fans. It's like, that's one of the things that we heard, like doing what's best for business. The question will always remain, is what's best for business bringing in Deshaun Watson? Because, let's say, understand this. What we have to understand is, however you may feel personally with Deshaun Watson, I have my feelings, and so do you. You're the listener, you're the viewer. But for some companies, and we've seen the NFL has kind of I guess you want to say the template, where they've shown that they'll bring in guys who have, like Greg Hardy. We saw Kareem Hunt. So there's a template for guys who've gone through legal issues to play in the league, to get a second chance. But it's all about the image. Because listen, if they can help you win a game, for some people, in the eyes of some, it kind of dimmers the situation. But I want to be super clear about those who feel that Deshaun Watson's clear. And I said in the video, and I promised I'd bring it up again, and I'll say it again. Just because he's not going to go to prison, there'll be no trial. It's not, those 22 civil lawsuits do not disappear. They're still there in the present. So we can't ignore the women. We can't ignore that. Some fans want to, but you simply can't. So that's something to keep in mind. But going back to Baker, how you may feel about Baker? Because listen, I said once, do I feel Baker could be the starting quarterback 22? Yes, I think he could. Because I think now, because when you have guys like Russell Wilson's off the market, the only real quarterback trade on the trade market is Jimmy Garoppolo. In terms of like actual trade value, like you can sign like a Mariota, you got Jameis Winston still out there, but in terms of like trade value, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. Especially after the Vikings, restructured Kirk Cousins' deal. So, is bringing in Deshaun Watson a slap in the face for Baker? And I say yes and no. Yes, it makes it feel like you're not committed to him for 2022, but also understanding it's a business. And I think deep down, Baker understands it's a business because you're always trying, like, if something's out there, whether you agree with the person, whether you agree or not, excuse me, with the person they're pursuing, it's still penultimately a business. So that's something to just keep in mind, but also understand this. At some point in the game, if you're Cleveland, and let's say if you're Jimmy Haslam, if you're Andrew Berry, you're in the front office, and let's just say Deshaun says, I want to go to Cleveland. You're obviously going to have to package Baker in the deal, so they can have a quarterback. But if you're a fan, are you okay with that? Because this is all about image. And I'm not saying, listen, I don't tell teams what to do because, listen, front offices should not be influenced by fans. Like, let's be super clear. Let's be super clear on that. But understand, taking on Deshaun Watson, no matter the team, you're taking on the image, you're taking on the media. And listen, Deshaun Watson, yeah, okay, listen, he may be, listen, there's no doubt about it. He's still not exempt from punishment from the league in that regard. So keep that in mind. But at the end of the day, and I wrap up and button up this point, Baker Mayfield kind of epitomizes Cleveland. And I said that. And going through multiple coaches, leading this team to the playoffs, playing through injury, he did all those things. Now, would I call Baker Mayfield a victim? No. Would I call him a hostage? No. Because there are situations in the world, as you well know, because we talk about the world, you see the globe behind me. So there's other things going on in the world that kind of lessen that statement. What I will say is that ideally, I think Baker's in a situation where he doesn't know his future, and neither do we. It's not a guarantee that Deshaun's going to be a Cleveland Brown, but you're clearly seeing where the fans are taking their stance on Baker and Deshaun. Things like this divide fan bases, whether it's Team Baker or Team Deshaun or Team anybody else. It's kind of like what Twilight was, Team Edward, Team Jacob. Listen, they tried. I had a friend of mine try to get me to watch the movie. I think I saw one of them. I can't tell you which one. But let's get back to the point. The point is this. Deshaun Watson, 26, he's a talented guy. But if you're Cleveland, knowing that you have to give up multiple picks, and most teams know what the package is to give up for him, but it's all, once again, it's about image. Do you want Deshaun Watson to be the new CEO of your team? Because he's going to be the face, and you want your CEO to produce results. That's why they're the highest paid. That's why you think the CEO is the highest paid person in the company. Why he or she's the highest paid person in the company for a reason. Look at Patrick Mahomes. Look at Aaron Rodgers. Like look at guys who listen. There's a reason why the quarterback is one of the highest paid guys, if not the highest paid guy on the team. That's something to think about. So that being said, before I do close, I'm glad baseball is back, and we're going to definitely talk more baseball. Hopefully on within, if not next week, possibly shooting for next week, we'll have someone to talk about baseball. A friend of mine, a face that you've seen before. So you've been listening to the show. You probably may or may not know who that is. But I had to throw that in there because through all the chaos and news that's going on in the world. But once again, like and subscribe, comment, drop questions to the podcast. Go follow me on Twitter at LaDarius_Brown and at LaDarius_Brown on Instagram. Follow the podcast page at Sports the World on Twitter and Instagram, and follow the podcast page. Polls, questions, things of that nature. Like and subscribe. Said that again. Bears worth repeating. Well, folks, until I see and hear you again, I'm LaDarius. Be real, be you, be blessed, and be safe from all of us here from the Sports and the World podcast.